Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The destruction of infrastructure and homes in southwest Poland caused by torrential rainfall and overflowing rivers continues. In areas where the floods have subsided, the cleanup has begun, but more rain is expected in other areas. What can we learn from the events that took place, and how can society better protect itself in the future? For insights on this and related questions, we're joined by our guest, Paweł Rowiński. He's director of the Institute of Geophysics, the Polish Academy of Sciences. The professor is a geophysicist and expert on hydrology. Professor, welcome to TVP World, and thank you very much for taking the time.
Good afternoon.
I know you've been very busy, lots of people wanting to talk to you about what's going on. What do you make of the situation? How would you characterize it? Did it surprise you?
It did not, for many reasons. First of all, we had very good forecasts earlier, so we all expected that it could happen after we knew that this low pressure system started from Mediterranean, and you can imagine Mediterranean Sea is extremely warm this year, and we even had the world records that time, and it met this strong cold wind from the Alps, so it could absorb a lot of moisture, and it started to wander through Europe. So this is what happened in Czech Republic and Austria earlier, and then in Poland. And so what happened then, that we had high pressure systems, two high pressure systems in Poland, which kept it for a long time in the south of Poland. So I think the forecasts were very good. So people expected that intensive rain. And this on one side, but on the other hand side, we need to remember that it does not happen often. So yeah, that's a very unique situation.
Unique combination of factors that have produced this. Now, one thing, as a layperson, I'm not clear on is the earth, the soil, isn't absorbing the rainfall. I mean, is it simply because of the makeup of the soil, or is there simply too much rainfall to deal with?
It started a bit different way because we had droughts in Poland.
Right.
So in principle, the soil was very dry, and dry soil does not absorb water.
All right.
So this water just slips over, and it goes to the rivers. So a lot of water that could be stopped somehow on floodplains, it went immediately to the river. So it's one thing, and another, it was just water itself in rivers. So it was at the beginning. Then it was like a sponge, so much wet that it didn't absorb more water. So
it's already clogged with.
Yeah. So it's a unfortunate combination, but I need to stress that it is the new normality, that we very often have long times without rain, and then if it rains, it is a very heavy rain. So it's a new normality in this area of Europe.
Right, so it's a new normal, and what's causing the new, when you call it new, so something must have changed. What has changed?
Now, you can imagine that, for example, in the 80s of last century, we had droughts in Poland like every 5 years. Mm-hmm. Now we have it every year, and it sometimes happens twice a year. So this is the difference. And the temperature is higher because of climate change. So the atmosphere absorbs much more water. Mm-hmm. So it causes that when it falls, after this long time of dry period, it falls immensely. So we have the rain like we had now. And of course, usually it's not that much rain, but you could remember that like 2 weeks ago, we had to have rain in Warsaw as well. So our streets were flooded. It was not the same, but it happens more and more often.
It was heavy enough. So if we can say that this is the new normal, what is it that society in general can do to protect against this repeating?
Oh yeah, that's if we knew exactly and that we wouldn't have these disasters. But in principle, we need to accept that we have climate change. So,
Right.
so after we accept it, we know that it will happen more and more in the future. So that's first thing. And when we think about measures against floods, we need to think about more than just infrastructure. It's education. And we need to, what I mentioned, to absorb this information, and then we need to somehow counteract, but in a sense that you need to know that things may happen like this one.
Right.
And there is no system in Europe, I think, over the world that could absorb that much rain. So you could see Austria, which is very well developed in sense of this infrastructure system, they couldn't stand it. They have horrible situation. Czech Republic, earlier Slovenia. But you can remember that 3 years ago, we had horrible floods in Germany and Belgium.
Yeah.
Although they have the best system in the world
Right.
in terms of protection against floods. So it shows that infrastructure is not enough for such heavy rains.
Right. Well, that's somewhat concerning, isn't it, Paweł? I mean, here we are, what do we have? We have dams, we have some kind of channeling system, and you're saying it's simply not going to work, whatever we do.
Yeah, but there are a lot of things that after we realize that it might happen, we need to know that when water is already in the river, it's probably too late. So you could do things before it gets to the river, for example, to create areas where the water can be absorbed by soil, for example. So this is why people say much more forests, much more green areas, and the areas that this water can be absorbed. And another thing is another paradigm, I would say, which, for example, in Netherlands, they name it More Room for River, and they spend a lot of money on this. So you try to have embankments farther from the river stream,
Right.
to give the river a chance to flood. And also you could think about areas that when you have the flood there, then it's much less expensive because it does not cause, casualties or much infrastructure losses. So you could think about, having your cows in the area and allowing eventually then to the river to flood.
Right.
But it's not that easy in the mountain region. So.
No, I can imagine in the mountains it must be terribly challenging to do that. But do you see then an opportunity for some kind of international effort, but especially in this region, the countries that you mentioned, to actually work together to get some kind of drainage system that is practicable? Because there's effect on agriculture, there's effect on investment, there's an effect on, living, accommodation. Houses are destroyed, people are, lose everything. It simply can't be allowed to continue, can it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right when you think about these tragedies that people have at home. So you shouldn't allow this, but we need to remember that we allowed people to live on floodplains. So that's and what is the problem? Up in 1997, when we had this largest flood ever, so we still allowed people to move and build houses in the areas that are risky. So that's one problem. So this spatial development should be, more be under concern. So for the future, so it's one aspect of this, and of course, that might be some measures. But even if you build things, so you build dams, and so then it's a matter of maintenance as well. So you can see that the major things happen due to, for example, embankment failure of leakages.
Right.
So because it's of maintenance, or the pressure of water is too high for those embankments. So that's, to some extent, we need to somehow take into account that from time to time there are such rains that we cannot do a lot about this, but we can be prepared to rescue people, to help them,
Yes.
to rebuild things. So
Yeah.
we should be much better prepared in this sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of logical, right?
Yeah,
But the thing is, Paweł, of course, that, as you said a few minutes ago, this could happen every year, and perhaps one needs to say, well, yes, it's very expensive building the dams and putting in the infrastructure and everything else. On the other hand, it does have a long-term return, rather than having to spend these enormous amounts on, every year. Would you agree?
Yeah, because it is what has changed. The flood 1997 was named like 1,000 years flood. So it was wrong because it comes from hydrology, from probability theory, etc. Right. But then for journalists and also for politicians, it was 1,000 years. It's why to care?
Yeah.
So then this 1,000 years comes after 20 years.
Right.
And of course we need to, and this is what I said at the beginning, that we need to accept that we have climate change, and these events will happen much more often, and of course we need to be much better prepared. But I have to say that when I observe all those people working during the flood, they are doing a great job.
Oh yeah. There's absolutely no doubt the emergency services have been heroic. But when you look at people who have lost their homes and all of their property and who have nowhere to go, I mean one can't help but feel devastated on their behalf as well. In terms of, we talk about climate change, and it's a very contentious issue. So without getting into it in too much detail, is there a possibility that this is cyclical, the effects of climate change in the region?
Cyclical in what sense? That things will happen again?
Cyclical in the sense that it happens and then it'll go away for a few years and happen somewhere else and then come back.
But I would say not exactly, because things happen again in the same places very often. And this is because probably wrong, again, spatial development. So people live in places which are risky. And I understand that the houses are, 100, 200 years old sometimes. So it happened much earlier, and the floods were already then. But you can also observe that those floods occur mostly in the places which are, let's say, well protected. We have dams there, and we have, so it somehow shows that this protection is not enough.
Not enough. Yeah. But maybe there is something that can be done to mitigate to some extent. I guess some clever heads, including yours, will be thinking about those kinds of solutions.
Yeah, there are two things. One, of course, things are done. I like this Racibusz reservoir, which I think may save Wrocław, for example, hopefully, because this is something that we are waiting for now, what will happen.
Yes.
But it's also, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not just infrastructure. It's, in principle, water management system.
Water management and education.
Yeah, education. And we need to be prepared for three things, for floodings, for droughts, and at the same time for improving water quality, which is very horrible in Poland.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Professor Rowiński, for joining us and enlightening our audience. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye for now.